Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope you're having a good day today so far and had a good week so far. Still a couple days left until the weekend. Having a good time. Today, I found time to record and I just wanted to jump on here and talk about a few things. I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet and not too terribly long. But I do want to say, today, Maya had been talking about this for a while now, saying that she was going to bring some tasers for us to keep up at the store. And, since the break-in last year. And she couldn't find them. Maybe it's because her dad was keeping them put up because he bought and paid for them. She did bring one today. A conversation I had with her last night prompted her to find one and make sure we at least had something aside from, I carry a knife, she carries a knife. But we wanted something else just because it's girls there. And we have been looking for counter help, and I'm sure I've mentioned this about needing to hire somebody. And somebody had come in a few weeks ago, left their phone number, and I called them. And when she came in, I talked to her, and she seemed really nice. Everything's fine. And I was going to have her come in and work a couple days, see how she liked it, if she could pick it up quickly, and if it would be a good fit. It would be like paid training and everything, but it wouldn't necessarily meant she would be permanent. We were just going to check it out. And she was supposed to come on Saturday. That didn't work out. On my end, it didn't work out. So she was supposed to come Tuesday at 1. Well, 1:30 rolls around, and I realized she's not there. And I told Maya, I'm like, she's not here. So I sent her a text, no response. I called, it went to voicemail. There was another phone number that I had to get in touch with her. No answer, no voicemail. And so I just let it go. I'm like, clearly this wasn't the person to work here. Obviously they're not responsible because they can't even communicate that they're not coming or that maybe something happened. So can she come another time? And I want to know that sooner rather than later. On Tuesday, Maya went home early. It was kind of slow, so I sent her home at 5 and worked the last 2 hours by myself. And a little before 6:30, this man comes in and he wants to ask questions about the cleaning process and the prices and things like that. And it's like this long conversation. And mind you, I didn't feel weird or uncomfortable. He seemed like a really nice man, and we were just having a nice conversation. No big deal. This happens all the time with customers. They come in and they'll just talk to you, and that's fine. And he was telling me that he works with the homeless people in that area, and he helps them get housing. He donates clothes, and that would be the reason he would be bringing clothes, is before he gave them to people, he wanted them cleaned, which I thought, well, that's really nice, even though, they're homeless and they'll take anything probably because they need stuff. To give them something clean, that's actually really nice. And to pay it out of your own pocket, that's even really nice. So then, come to find out, he has a link to this girl that I was possibly considering hiring. And I told him that she never showed up. And he was like shocked and didn't know why. Why wouldn't she? She seemed so ecstatic about, getting a job because she really needed one. And then I learned that she's battling a drug addiction. She's addicted to drugs right now. And not that I have no judgment. I've been there. I've gone through it. But I also know how someone that has an addiction to drugs can be. I know the things that they can do that maybe they wouldn't do otherwise for the fact of this addiction. And I'm just not willing to hire anybody that is battling that, not just because I'm worried about maybe they might steal from us, but the unreliability. Because if, for whatever reason, they can't get what they need, they get sick, and then they can't come into work. And they're, I just couldn't take the chance. Not willing to take the chance. And as he's leaving, he informs me that that girl's boyfriend, husband, I don't know if they're married or not, was outside in the truck and asked me if I wanted to meet him. And I'm like, oh, well, I gotta close, not really. And so he left. And when he asked me that, that's when I got uncomfortable. So the drive-thru door was already shut and locked. I immediately went and locked the front door, even though I wasn't closed. I grabbed my purse in case I needed to run out the back door, but I didn't want to leave my purse behind. And I called my mom. And it was really weird to me that he acted shocked that he didn't know she didn't come in. But yet he's with her boyfriend, so he would have already known she didn't show up. And I'm telling my stepmom and my dad on the way home, and I'm like, something just doesn't sit right with me on this one. And I'm leaning to believe that she wasn't looking for a job. Maybe that was a ploy to get close to the store. Maybe they were intending to case the place and maybe come and rob it. I don't know. Maybe they meant nothing. Maybe it's all real and maybe these are decent people and they would never do that. I don't know. Either way, all I know is it made me very uncomfortable, and that's why Maya decided to bring the taser in, because we don't really have much in the way of defending ourselves if somebody was to come in and do that. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. What do you guys think? Does that sound weird to you? Does that strike you as something suspicious going on? Would it make you uncomfortable? Because I don't know. I still am uncomfortable when I think about how odd all of that was. Anyway, that's like my longest intro I've ever done. And I also said like. Yes, I did. Let's read our daily promise. Thou art my hiding place and my shield. I hope in thy sword. Psalm 119, verse 114. The Lord promises to protect us from the attacks of our enemy, the devil. It is in God's word that we find the salvation that gives us hope to live. I'm sorry if y'all heard me just pop my knuckle. I had to pop it, and I think that was really loud. At least it was to me. Okay. So I have a few stories to talk about. First thing I want to talk about, because I'm not going to really do much on it. We know that there were a lot of people releasing Let's Go Brandon songs back when Let's Go Brandon was just starting to take off. And Kid Rock has just come out with a song that includes a Let's Go Brandon chorus. Now I'm not going to play it because I am not going to get copyright claim. But this is written by Brodigan on Louder with Crowder. From the cornfields of Romeo, Michigan, the early morning stoned pimp of the nation, the Detroit City cowboy, and the American badass, Kid Rock just released a brand new single, We the People. I'm not sure if he has a new album coming out or if he just felt like triggering people. He's currently trending number 3 nationally on Twitter, so if it's the latter case, mission accomplished. Mr. Rock has an impressive potty mouth, so send the kids out of the room and enjoy. And I mean, that's another reason that I don't intend to play certain songs, because of the lyrics. I guess this is from the song COVID's near, it's coming to town, we gotta act quick, shut our borders down. Joe Biden does, the media embraces, Big Don does it, and they call him racist. Yes they do. So the chorus goes, we the people, let's go Brandon. I don't need to remind you what let's go Brandon means, do I? I see other articles recapping what let's go Brandon means, but I feel like the louderwithcrowder.com website faithful knows what let's go Brandon means. The KID goes on to say F Facebook, F Twitter, F Fauci, and of course F Biden, though he ends on a unifying message of Americans coming together, which is nice. Kid Rock first started speaking out on politics when he endorsed Mitt Romney for president in 2012. In 2017, there were rumors of him running for the U.S. Senate. It wound up just being a PR stunt for new music. But for a while, he had the Washington Press Corps and Chuck Schumer running scared. Again, mission accomplished. Kid Rock is set to embark on a headlining tour this summer. I'll assume he won't be playing New York City or Los Angeles, but will be playing the rest of real America in the middle. Yeah, I probably. Also, by the way, since I'm talking about Louder with Crowder, can't wait for the release of the video that they just did. Is Wikipedia biased, which comes out today as I am uploading this. So y'all should go check that out because it looks like it'd be really good. Speaking of songs that trigger people, Tom MacDonald just released his newest song. I think it's called The Brave, which I absolutely loved. And I think I talked about that. And I may have posted about it on social media rather than on here. But my favorite lyric from that song is when he says, "We call dads deadbeats for neglecting their boys, but mothers who kill a baby, but mothers who kill their baby, we call it pro-choice." Something like that. It's a really good song. I really love his songs. Okay. Maya was telling me about something that she was watching about the Playboy bunnies and Hugh Hefner and the things that he did. People coming out about, like, I guess, sexual abuse. I'm not sure. I don't know because I don't watch it. But I do remember telling her that I didn't have any sympathy for these girls, especially the ones that have been going, in later years. Because I do believe that there were Playboy bunnies that had come out and spoken about the things that they went through while living in the Playboy mansion and with Hugh Hefner, and they spoke out against him. And so people already kind of knew these things, or at least some of it, yet girls still did it anyway because they are, low self-esteem, they have no self-control, no impulse control, and they're attention whores, and they'll do anything for money, and they're also lazy because they would rather just do this to get a whole lot of money than to actually put in the effort and work to get that kind of money. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for these girls. This is not like someone entering in a one-on-one relationship with a man that turns out to be abusive, and it becomes this cycle of abuse that they feel like they have nowhere to go. These are several women living in a mansion that are under contract that could easily go get a lawyer and get themselves out of it. This is not the same thing. So I don't have sympathy for them. The whole woe is me thing, you put yourself in that situation, stop crying about it, just get out of it. Anyway, so the Daily Wire has an article about Playboy responding to claims of bestiality and other atrocities by Hugh Hefner revealed in Secrets of Playboy docu-series. Now, I thought I'd take a minute to go through this. I'm not going to spend my time watching it because it's degeneracy and I don't care. But it's a 10-part A&E network docu-series. It just premiered Monday, but it's already making waves in the entertainment industry. Followers were mostly aware of Playboy founder Hugh Hefner's highly unconventional lifestyle and penchant for exploring the boundaries of sexual promiscuity. But the claims being made in the documentary are truly shocking. Most fans know Hefner, who died in 2017 at the age of 91, as the man who commercialized pornographic images. He smoked pipes, wore silk pajamas, and ruled over a revolving harem of young blonde women. The hedonistic, drug, and orgy-filled parties at the Playboy Mansion are the stuff of legends. Yeah, he was a dirty old man. That's exactly what he was, a dirty old man. However, the women who once participated in Hefner's lifestyle are now claiming there were acts of depravity happening that even the most sexually progressive people would condemn. They are claiming incidents of rape and bestiality behind the mansion's walls. Some of the strongest voices on the docuseries so far come from Hef's former Playmate girlfriend, Sandra Theodore, director of Playmate Promotions, Mickey Garcia, and longtime bunny mother, PJ Maston, who managed the staff at Playboy nightclubs. You have to ask yourself, these girls, because I recognize that name, PJ, so they've been around for a while, and if they knew this stuff was going on, why were they not encouraging girls to not come and be a part of it? Why were they not, going to the side? And you can't tell me that they weren't a huge part in bringing new girls in. You cannot tell me that they didn't participate in that. Garcia described the overall atmosphere as toxic. She said, quote, "It was cult-like. The women had been groomed and led to believe they were part of this family. Hefner really did believe he owned these women. We had playmates that overdosed, that committed suicide," end quote. Most documentary participants agree that Hefner's insatiable appetites led to desensitization, meaning he required more extreme, bizarre sexual acts to become aroused. Well, if you'll go watch John Doyle about how porn is destroying our society, he explains exactly why that happens. This is what led him to watching snuff films and allegedly forcing others to engage in sex acts with animals or doing so himself. I don't know. I'm sure by now most people know what a snuff film is, but if you don't, it's a film where you actually watch someone being killed. Like, it's not Hollywood magic. It's really someone being killed on film. And I don't know if they necessarily agree to be killed or if they don't have a choice in the matter. I don't know how it works. I've never watched one. Theodore claimed, "I walked in on him with my dog and I said, 'What are you doing?' I was shocked. He made it seem like it was just a one-time thing and that he was just goofing off, but I never left him alone with my dog again." At another point, the former playmate said, "He scared me at the end. You couldn't satisfy him. He wanted more and more and more." And a 91-year-old man that you couldn't just walk out of the room? Really? Come on. She also discussed Hefner's effect on the women who entered the mansion. "I watched girl after girl show up, fresh-faced, adorable, and their beauty just washed away. We were nothing to him," Theodore said. "He was like a vampire. He sucked the life out of these girls for decades." And here's the other thing. I know I keep stopping, but here's the other thing. When you look at a one-on-one relationship, the girl is alone. She is isolated. You're talking about several women living in a home together, and they couldn't get away from a 91-year-old pervert. And if you cannot defend yourself against that, you got some serious issues. And I think it speaks more volumes of your character than it does of Hugh Hefner's, that you stayed when you had all of the possibility and the means to just walk out. Unfortunately, the story about Hefner and a dog isn't the only alleged incident of animal cruelty to come out of secrets. Daily Mail reported that one episode includes an interview with the 1970s deep throat porn star Linda Lovelace, who recalls being treated like a piece of meat and made to perform oral sex on a German Shepherd with Hefner and his friends watching. Made to perform? Maybe it's because I've never been subjected to it. Maybe it's because I've never dealt with it. But I just have a very, very hard time comprehending that this is something they were forced into, that they couldn't get away. It's very hard for me to look at it that way. Since the episodes aired, the Playboy brand has been working to distance itself from its founder. Playboy's group leadership team released an open letter just ahead of the January 24th premiere. It said in part that they, quote, "trust and validate women and their stories, strongly support the individuals who have come forward to share their experiences. Also, as a brand with sex positivity at its core, we believe safety, security, and accountability are paramount, and anything less is inexcusable. Today's Playboy is not Hugh Hefner's Playboy. Together, we are building upon the aspects of our legacy that have made a positive impact, including serving as a platform for free expression and a convener of safe conversations on sex, inclusion, and freedom." That's the problem. Playboy shouldn't be allowed to even exist. That's the problem. And free expression should definitely have its limits in the public eye. And I think if that were the case, if we limited people's free expression, our society would not be falling into depravity quite as quickly as we're seeing it do it. We will continue to confront any parts of our legacy that do not reflect our values today, and to build upon the progress we have made as we evolve as a company so we can drive positive change for you and our communities. The letter also mentioned that the Hefner family is no longer affiliated with the brand. I'm sorry, but Playboy cannot drive any positive change for people, individuals, communities. It's not a positive thing. It's a very negative and disgraceful thing that we allow that that we allow any of that to take place. Webcam girls shouldn't be allowed to exist. Prostitutes shouldn't be allowed to walk the streets and and be in the sex industry. It shouldn't be allowed. This is how you have a society that falls apart and is incohesive, because you allow people to have not liberty, but freedom to do whatever they want, even if it's wrong, and you allow it anyway. And that's not what freedom and liberty is. Freedom is freedom and liberty. So it is the right to do what is right, not the right to just do whatever feels good. That's not what liberty is, because you're not free when you're indulging in this type of behavior. You're a slave to that behavior. Okay. Let's see. So since we're talking about how this is how society has devolved into what we know today, let's talk about what we're seeing on our TVs. And how Hollywood's new diversity, equity, and inclusion executives are shaping what's on your screens. Because I think what's coming out of Hollywood is very negative, and it indoctrinates, it's propaganda, it can gaslight. And not to say that there hasn't been things that I've seen that I enjoyed. There's plenty that I enjoy. But I think we need to be very careful, especially when it comes to like what our kids are watching. So this is by Megan Basham from the Daily Wire. It says, in the past few years, every week seems to bring headlines in the Hollywood trades heralding a studio or network's onboarding of a new diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI executive. Netflix, Lionsgate, AMC, Warner Brothers, Disney, SiriusXM, TikTok, NBC, all have thrown big C-suite salaries at hires who will ensure their organizations stay in good standing with left-wing activist groups, or if not in good standing, at least good enough to keep Black Lives Matter and Nicole Hannah-Jones off their back. I don't think she's even running anything anymore. In fact, these days it would be harder to find an established entertainment company of any stripe that doesn't have some in-house professional making sure all its representation I's are dotted and T's crossed. Just how ubiquitous has the DEI class become in Hollywood? Despite the fact that it was doing diversity long before diversity was cool, hello, Gordon, Lewis, and Maria, even Sesame Street now has its own dedicated inclusion enforcer. Though a recent article published on journalist Barry Weiss's website, Common Sense, cited the 2015 Oscars So White controversy as the catalyst for Tinseltown's awakening, the truth is the entertainment world is in perfect lockstep with the rest of corporate America when it comes to the DEI trend. A recent study from the career networking platform LinkedIn, for instance, found that diversity and inclusion officers are now the fastest growing job with chief in the title. Trickling down from there, in middle management, DEI jobs are now the second highest in demand, behind only vaccination specialists, a role that hopefully won't be quite as sought after once COVID infections recede. The difference between Viacom, CBS, and Citigroup changing their hiring and promotion practices from merit-based to be representation-based, however, is that Viacom CBS's policies are instantly reflected in their public-facing product, the shows you see on your TV screen. Until the last few years, a company wanting to prove its commitment to racial, gender, and sexual identity justice needed only to roll out a couple of annual unconscious bias seminars and sensitivity workshops under the umbrella of human resources. The problem, as activists eventually found, was that such performative exercises were too easy for both management and employees to check off their to-do list and forget. Cheap diversity statements including buzzwords like allyship and BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color, didn't functionally change a free market corporate culture. Even the most progressive sectors like tech still hired the most qualified recruits as opposed to the most diverse. What that meant in Hollywood was that while studio and network execs paid lip service to feminism and racial justice, they still chose the scripts, directors, and actors sure to put butts in seats. Doubt that money rather than white privilege was the driving factor of fame and fortune in the early 2000s, then consider that some of the most successful actors of those decades were Will Smith, Halle Berry, and Jamie Foxx. By the same token, Ava DuVernay, Shonda Rhimes, and John Singleton became directing and producing powerhouses long before anyone had ever heard of BLM. Thus, more and more leftist reformers began arguing that DEI must become its own initiative within an organization rather than an offshoot of HR. For a time, this led corner offices to contract with pricey outside consultants. The demands such experts made could be exacting, though, as detailed in New York Magazine's story that described DEI consultancy work as granular. The reforms such consultants recommend include everything from restructuring salaries and bonuses to reforming insurance options to giving employee quote-unquote resource groups, essentially at-work group therapy where membership depends on skin color, the ability to weigh in on marketing campaigns. But hidden within New York's reporting was the key that explains why so many companies have now begun to turn away from outside input and instead have dedicated sometimes enormous sums to full-time DEI staffers. The consultants told the outlet that many of their corporate clients, quote, don't really want to change, they just want to look as if they are changing, end quote. The tendency of some DEI companies to badmouth their clients for failing to take their advice was placed in high relief during the implosion of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, the group behind the Golden Globes. When the HFPA was dealing with a PR nightmare over its lack of black members, it hired several DEI consultants. According to The Hollywood Reporter, 2 of those image fixers had different ideas about how to get the organization back in racial activists' good graces. One quit after accusing the HFPA of refusing to commit to concrete actions. Ultimately, she let it be known to the entertainment press that she believed the Golden Globes problems were, quote, so deep-rooted that it was a lost cause, end quote. The second consultant resigned soon after, claiming that the scope of the issue was, quote, beyond what he originally understood it to be, end quote. In the end, the organization ended up with an exponentially bigger image problem than it had started with. It resulted in nearly every major industry player cutting ties with the Globes, including broadcasting partner NBC. 2 weeks ago, the HFPA handed out honors without a red carpet, without celebrities, and without so much as a streaming live feed for audiences at home to watch. For all practical purposes, the Golden Globes no longer exists as an awards production. That's the kind of cautionary tale that has been leading companies to make yesterday's consultants today's full-time DEI employees. The idea being that in the high-stakes game of Hollywood media coverage, an in-house executive is less likely to leak negative information to Variety or Deadline because any failures would be their own in many respects. And after all, the money for the DEI corner office is reportedly very good. So last March, pundit David French argued that the right puts, quote, way too much stock in the content of diversity training materials. They treat it as culture-changing stuff, and most folks approach it with a sense of bored irritation, a box they have to check before they get back to their days. He went on to say the main reason companies do it is to mitigate litigation risk. If French had any notion of the latest inclusion standards being issued by nearly every major Hollywood studio, he'd know just how outdated his understanding of current DEI practice is. And he'd know that the way the game is played these days, studios may very well be putting themselves at greater likelihood of lawsuits by acquiescing to inclusion officers' demand. Today, diversity standards aren't about making sure employees don't use offensive words or minority staffers do feel emotionally supported. They're about hard quotas. To wit, ABC is committed to making sure 50% of its showrunners, writers, producers, crew, performers, virtually everyone involved with production, checks the BIPOC representation box by the end of the year. CBS is aiming for 40% minority representation in its writers' rooms and for 25% of its script development budget to fund projects from creators, writers, and producers who qualify as diverse. That's to go along with the new diversity mandates required for Oscar and Emmy awards. Even when a company has dutifully employed DEI staff and implemented their internal mandates, racial activists may still launch shockingly personal and vicious attacks against specific white competitors, as when 130 activist filmmakers accused PBS of a racist over-reliance on the work of documentarian Ken Burns. Widely recognized as one of the most gifted nonfiction filmmakers of our era, a man who has honed his skill over 44 years, Burns' name only draws millions of viewers to the network. Alone draws millions of viewers. Yet the letter's signatories claimed PBS's exclusive relationship with him was the result of uninvestigated privilege. Questioning whether PBS could be doing better should not be seen as an attack, they wrote in a sinister bit of gaslighting, but as an opportunity for meaningful dialogue and action, and to engage BIPOC filmmakers as we chart a course forward. In the end, PBS gave in to their demands, promising to sink $11 million exclusively into documentaries from BIPOC filmmakers, while announcing that producers who want to work with the network in the future will have to demonstrate how their project aligns with PBS's DEI principles. In other words, there were protection rackets in Sicily less effective than today's racial justice syndicates at extracting money from frightened marks. This kind of muscle flexing to remove potent rivals in the job market is exactly what a former Disney producer who asked me to withhold his name describes. While working for the Mouse House, the producer experienced all the racial struggle sessions, wherein he was encouraged to recognize his white privilege and guilt that has been well covered by independent journalists like Christopher Rufo. But he describes the real impact of DEI in much more concrete terms. For instance, in his 5 years with the company, he details having to maintain records that proved he was giving minority and female candidates the first opportunity, and sometimes the only opportunity, at every job. The vice presidents of productions would tell us, "We're going to make a commitment to X amount of diversity," he tells me. So we had to start logging every African American that we would put forward to direct, and every African American owned company that we put forward to produce a project. And they would provide us with outside companies that were sort of collating all of the females or minorities in the industry for hiring purposes. What he found most frustrating was having to pass over loyal, longtime contractors to fill a racial quota. I was like, these guys have been working with us for years, he recalls, and we know we can rely on them. We're going to pass over this guy who we know does good work because he's not black? It just doesn't make sense. Once hired, the producer tells me the talent employed to meet diversity mandates often feel empowered to make demands that would have been out of the question for their white counterparts. The Common Sense article reported on one Hollywood insider who said, "Human resources departments at the studios and streaming services are awash in complaints directed at white male showrunners just for doing their job. It's gotten to the point where I won't give notes on a script any longer to a woman or a person of color." My source says the same. He describes one incident, asking me to keep details vague, where a black actress was hired with a clear understanding of her role in a G-rated scene. Once it was time to shoot, she decided she didn't want to perform the scene as scripted, feeling it would mess up her hair. The director persisted, explaining that the terms of her contract were clear. The actress dissolved into tears, and the director was ultimately reprimanded for his lack of racial sensitivity. No one else stepped up to address the situation because the producer tells me, quote, "If it had anything to do with anything racial, none of us were going to say anything because, it's all just kind of keep your head down so that the finger doesn't get pointed at you," end quote. Yet for all the difficulty of trying to work under such fraught conditions, the producer says the most troubling aspect of DEI department's oversight was the question of whether what they were doing was even legal. I would try to raise the issue very subtly, like, are we going to get in trouble if I call up an agent or somebody and say we only want your African American directors? Am I going to get in trouble for that? And essentially the vice president told me, that's why we want you to go through these third parties. Right, because you can get in trouble with that because it's discrimination and you're not allowed to do it legally. By third parties, the producer means entertainment hiring platforms that specialize in offering studios only candidates of color, a business model that's proliferated throughout the industry in the last few years despite its dubious legality. Certainly, if there's any hope of arresting the DEI train now that it's barreling down the tracks, it likely lies with the courts. I reached out to a former entertainment attorney, himself a racial minority, who's now general counsel for a multi-billion-dollar tech firm. Once again, for the sake of his continued employment, he asked me not to use his name, but he shared that he has serious doubts over whether the kind of overtly race-based quotas now being openly employed in Hollywood are constitutional. He does nonetheless acknowledge that it's happening all over corporate America, particularly in the highest echelons. DEI departments really push to hire minority candidates at the executive level, he shares. You'll hear, "We really need to diversify our executive leadership team," or they'll say, "Look, it's going to be most meaningful if we can show diverse metrics for the executive leadership team, so we should really stress hiring diverse candidates for this position." He explains that most times non-minority candidates will never know for sure that they were passed over because they failed to meet the BIPOC requirement. If you're a white male, you may not make an initial selection cut, let alone second interviews or callbacks, he says. That makes it difficult for lawsuits to develop from the outside, but if such practices are provable, they leave companies open to getting sued. A lot of that's going to be due to the DEI departments that kind of push for that, the attorney says. And again, I think a lot of times it's couched in such words that it may not be a legal slam dunk if we weren't found out or discovered later. He continues, the challenge for businesses is if they are merely looking at diversity as a kind of plus factor or simply saying, hey, it's good to have all diverse candidates, then that might be fine. Unfortunately, the reality is it's gotten to the point where it's almost, if you're white and male, you need not apply. And I think that to the extent it gets to that level, you're going to see a lot of unlawful discrimination and unlawful termination type lawsuits, or even failure to hire or failure to consider, especially if it's that blatant, and it's becoming that blatant. Yeah, it is becoming that blatant because it has already been spoken about the new Supreme Court justice that Biden is to nominate, that it should be a black woman. He needs to nominate a black woman. Why? Because she's a black woman. Now, people have made suggestions that they mean black woman as in that's leaning towards he should nominate Kamala Harris, but she's a vice president, so can he even nominate her? I didn't think that was even possible. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, it's definitely illegal and unconstitutional, and they can't do it, which is why they're very discreet about the way they do it, because they know they were blatant, even though they're becoming more blatant because they've got all the institutions on their sides right now. Even the courts, they know they're open for lawsuits. The marketing angle is a no, but even apart from the legal jeopardy, there's also the question of whether the conventional wisdom that embracing DEI is a smart business decision is correct. The marketing angle is that being able to show the public that your company is doing the work of racial and gender justice is an inevitable net good for corporate image. The general counsel I spoke with, however, points out how greatly this assumption has proved to be wrong with at least half the country. From Major League Baseball facing the ire of fans for moving the game out of Georgia last year, to Coca-Cola being blasted for telling employees to be less white, wokeness often isn't the selling point it's made out to be. You are starting to see a pushback emerge, the attorney tells me, especially in the cutting-edge sectors like cryptocurrency. You got these companies that are called mission-focused companies now, like Coinbase, who has said, look, we are not going to bring politics into the workplace. We're just going to focus on the mission of our company. It's still a significant minority view, but it is starting to emerge more strongly. It's not a minority view. What it is that the majority that believes it have been conditioned to be afraid to not speak up. Most people hate this crap and they cannot stand it and they want it to go away. But they've been conditioned to stay quiet. Okay, I watched a video from Glenn Beck about the falling stock market is nothing compared to what's coming. And I just wanted to talk about it with you real quick. Because it leads into the last thing that I'm going to talk about. So, the stock markets have taken a nosedive in the biggest downtrend since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, but that's nothing compared to what's coming thanks to our government's embrace of modern monetary theory, warned Blaze TV's Glenn Beck on the radio program. It really is important that you understand what's happening to us. Modern monetary theory is truly the fuel for the Great Reset. It is the idea that we can print as much money and spend as much money as we want. Then the next step is to release the Federal Reserve digital currency and make payments by other currencies, including cryptocurrencies, illegal. And you're seeing it happen now in real time. Why would they do this? Because you cannot print this kind of money without having absolute control over how it is spent. Glenn wrote down the steps powerful political organizations like the Federal Reserve will take to end currency competition and enact a federal digital dollar, which will allow for the government to have complete control over how we spend our money. This is what's coming. This is coming quickly, and events will make it move faster. For instance, why is Joe Biden basically giving Ukraine to Russia? He's giving it to them. He knows Russia's not afraid of him. Putin knows that Biden is not going to do anything. Neither is NATO. They're not going to do anything. It's because war resets everything. War is the best great resetter. Changes boundaries, it changes borders, it changes laws, it changes societies, it changes currencies, it changes everything. And in the end, you just want the war to stop, and so you accept whatever it is the terms are that are going to have to live under now. We're in very, very dangerous times. The only way to survive this is to know why they are dangerous times. And so then you can go watch These Steps Will Lead to a Digital Dollar and Loss of Financial, I don't know what the rest of it says, but you should go watch that. I love Glenn Beck. He has a lot of good stuff. So the last thing that I want to talk about, my mother told me something about somebody filing their taxes and the child tax credit, and with these checks that were going out to families with children, it's kind of screwed everything up. I'm going to try and read through this as quickly as I can. The left promised this Biden policy would slash child poverty. Here's what really happened, and this is by Ben Johnson. So I'm going to just kind of read the meat of the story. How Biden turned the child tax credit into a welfare check. So Congress created the child tax credit in 1997 to help support parents, recognizing that the government has an interest in discouraging a low fertility rate, which is strongly tied to economic stagnation. The CTC began as a minimal $400 a year non-refundable tax credit, which meant parents could only collect the full amount if they owed at least $400 in federal income taxes. That also meant parents had to work in order to receive this tax reduction. But the CTC has steadily expanded under presidents of both parties. President Donald Trump increased the amount and scope of the child tax credit as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, but recipients had to earn at least $2,500 a year to qualify, and parents could collect only a part of the total credit if the CTC exceeded their IRS bill. In 2021, Joe Biden's American Rescue Plan transformed the child tax credit into a monthly welfare check. The ARP served the CTC's original connection to work or its status as a tax reduction. Parents received 100% of the tax credit even if they owed no federal income taxes, and the plan contained no work requirement. Perhaps most transformatively, recipients no longer had to wait until the end of the year to receive the credit with its tax refund. Starting last July, families making up to $150,000 a year could bank a tax credit of $300 a month for every child under the age of 6 and $250 for every child aged 6 to 17, deposited directly into their bank accounts even if they did not work 1 hour that year. By one estimate, 80% of the new child tax credit's benefits go to people who owe no federal income tax. The new child tax credit's advocates insisted the new CTC would decimate child poverty. The CTC, quote, has the potential to reduce monthly child poverty by up to 40% on its own. This is according to a group of scholars at Columbia University's Center on Poverty and Social Policy. While they estimated the CTC greatly reduced child poverty, they admitted their numbers are speculative. That led another group of scholars at the University of Notre Dame's Lab for Economic Opportunity to use real numbers. Vile, I guess? I don't know how you say it. Oh, they just misspelled while. I feel like such an idiot. While they acknowledged November's promising reduction in child poverty of 1.8 percentage points, they concluded, quote, we still do not see the sharp decline in the poverty rate for children that had been forecasted. So poverty analyst Angela Ricciardi, I don't know, of AEI noted, it appears from the preliminary data that the claims on the effects of the CTC on child poverty might have been oversold. A street-level analysis of the CTC bears this out. A Politico Morning Consult poll found that 61% of Americans said the CTC had little or no impact on their lives. A majority, or 52% of Americans, opposed extending the CTC, with only 18% saying lawmakers should definitely make the program permanent. Part of the problem lies in the way the U.S. measures poverty. The official U.S. poverty level does not include non-cash benefits such as public housing, Medicaid, and food stamps. The Cato Institute found that the median value of welfare benefits in all 50 states is $28,500 a year in 2013. That's higher than the 2022 poverty level for an average family of 4. Since the U.S. poverty level does not measure consumption but income, that means the poverty problem is really an income problem. By that measure, Biden's CTC made America's poverty problem systemically worse. President Ronald Reagan once said, the best social program is a job. Conservatives warned at the outset that giving money to non-working families will increase the number of families that rely primarily on government benefits as a replacement for work. Biden's CTC will subsidize non-working families, increasing the likelihood that the most vulnerable will remain outside the workforce. It also will subsidize single parenthood, including among teens, thereby weakening the probability that children will be raised by a married mother and father, wrote Leslie Ford of the Heritage Foundation. Some people would make more money from the CTC than they can earn at work. Others will be willing to trade a little income for 40 hours of leisure. In all, the CTC would lead 1.5 million workers, constituting 2.6% of all working parents, to exit the labor force, according to a study from the University of Chicago. What happens when that many people leave the workforce? The decline in employment and the consequent earnings loss would mean that child poverty would only fall by 22%, and deep child poverty would not fall at all with the CTC expansion, they found. So, any program seeking to deal with the root causes of child poverty would encourage people to get a full-time job, any full-time job, and keep it. In 2019, the poverty rate for people who worked full-time all year was just 2.4%. Full-time workers remain much less likely to be among the working poor than part-time workers. Okay, the same pattern holds true in the United Kingdom and in Canada. The success sequence, originally propounded by Isabel V. Sawhill and Ron Haskins of the Brookings Institution, found that people who finish high school, work full-time, wait until age 21 to get married, and do not have children outside wedlock have a tiny likelihood of living in poverty. Biden's CTC takes aim at full-time work and thus systemically undermines bona fide anti-poverty efforts. So why does the left still love the new child tax credit? It paves the way to the welfare state. If the CTC failed to deliver an overall poverty reduction, and most Americans don't want the program extended, why do left-wing politicians and ideologues remain so committed to it? They admit the reason in their journals and op-eds. The new CTC is a form of wealth redistribution. A child subsidy figures into every European social welfare state where the native-born birth rate has been cratering for a generation. They believe making families dependent on government handouts will increase the desire to ratchet up wealth redistribution. Robert Kuttner of the American Prospect, who once also wrote, "To be an effective liberal today, you need to be a socialist," praised the simple, radical Rooseveltian idea of giving people money. Emphasis and original. It's not enough, but it's one hell of a leap forward that will create momentum for more leaps. After all, this is free money and word will spread, but it's not free money. In true Rooseveltian fashion, they also hope one three-letter government program will replace another. Left-wingers believe the CTC will pave the way for UBI, a universal basic income. Reuters admitted last July the child tax credit is being likened to a universal basic income for children. The Los Angeles Times went further, declaring the new child tax credit being paid out to American parents will prove the virtues of universal basic income. The left sees the fact that the CTC convinces people to stop working as a feature, not a bug. A wealth transfer payment gets Americans used to collecting a government check for doing nothing. Studies show welfare dependents are more likely to vote for the party that expand those benefits, namely the Democrats. In short, the Democratic Party is buying the votes of unproductive Americans with your tax dollars and trying to fundamentally transform America into a socialist nation. Don't let them pretend it's about anything else, especially the children. So, looking at that, those checks that you're getting, so you are getting advanced your child tax credit for the end of the year, right? So, if you received monthly advanced child tax credit payments in 2021, there may be a costly surprise when filing your return. The American Rescue Plan, enacted in last March, increased the tax break to $3,000 from $2,000 per child under age 17, with $600 more for kids under age 6. Millions of families received upfront monthly credits, reducing their write-off at tax time, which may trigger a bill depending on their 2021 modified adjusted gross income. That will certainly be a surprise for folks. And you're not going to know exactly where you fall until you actually file your taxes, given the complexity of the calculation. Okay, so we know how much the checks were. However, with pandemic-related job loss and business revenue drops in 2020, you may have earned more in 2021, possibly reducing or eliminating eligibility for the enhanced benefits. That's going to be a rude shock for a lot of folks, said Dan Herron, a San Luis Obispo, California-based CFP and CPA with Elemental Wealth Advisors, especially with a big swing between 2020 and 2021 income. There are two phase-outs for the child tax credit, reducing eligibility for the 2021 increases and the $2,000 base credit amount. The first one begins above $75,000 for single parents. Okay, so we know that. With multiple steps, it's not an easy calculation. The IRS started mailing copies of Letter 6419 in late December, covering the total advanced child tax credit payments received in 2021 and the number of qualifying children used to calculate amounts. Be on the lookout for this letter and don't throw it away. Letter 6419 should match the information in the Child Tax Credit Update portal. However, a married couple filing together may both need to reconcile their payments. Reconciling the advanced child tax credit payments may also cause IRS refund delays. There were still 6.3 million unprocessed returns as of December 18th, according to the IRS, including 2020 filings with stimulus check errors. This is going to be even worse, said Tommy Lucas, a CFP and enrolled agent at Moisen Fitzgerald Tomeo in Orlando, Florida. However, you can make sure your payments match what the IRS reports on Letter 6419 or in the portal. It's better to find out if you have to repay part or all of the child tax credit sooner than later. You can adjust spending appropriately between now and April. So, you thought that it was such a great thing that you were getting these monthly checks while you're struggling, but it's going to screw you when you file your taxes, and you're probably going to end up owing owing more, so you get less back at the end of the year. So, thank you, Biden. And not that it matters, because that money is yours regardless. The money you get back on your income tax return, that was your money. You paid the government too much in taxes, so they have to give it back to you. Without interest, I might add. Yet if you owe them, they make you pay interest, and it's a ridiculous amount. Anyway, I'm going to leave the episode here for today. I hope you had a good time. Thank you for joining me. And like I said, I love recording, and I miss you guys when I don't get to do it. Anyway, please go subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google. Leave me a review if you want to. Head on over to my YouTube channel. You can leave me a comment, and I'll get back to you. Leave me a comment on, or anywhere on my social media, whatever. Let me know what you think about the story at the beginning, and if you thought it sounded suspicious. And then go and like and share all my videos. Subscribe to my channel, because that would be greatly appreciated. But if you want to know when I'm uploading new videos, you still have to hit the notification bell, because the subscriptions don't really give you those notifications like they should, and you may not see my stuff. Anyway, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you for joining me. God bless.